Stars who simply vanished after the 80s. Remember the first time you saw Family Ties and thought Mallory Keaton was the coolest girl alive? Or when you swore Anthony Michael Hall's shy grin in 16 Candles was basically you on screen? The 80s weren't just a decade, they were a feeling, a world of big hair, bright colors, and even bigger personalities. Back then, certain faces were everywhere, on cereal boxes, t-shirts, pinups on bedroom walls. They weren't just actors. They were part of our lives. The icons of a generation defined by John Hughes movies and synth-pop mixtapes. Then the decade flipped the calendar, the shoulder pads deflated, and the cultural landscape shifted. And in that shift, something strange happened. Poof. Half the people who defined the era just weren't around anymore. Their posters yellowed, their airtime ceased, and their names became answers to trivia questions. This isn't about the slow fades or the comebacks that fizzled. This is a different story. It's about the stars who were at the absolute peak of their fame, the ones who had Hollywood in the palm of their hands, and then made a conscious decision to walk away. It's about the ones who slammed the door on fame, changed the locks, and never looked back. These are the stories of incredible vanishing acts, of people who chose a different life when the one they had was the envy of millions. 10 stories, 10 vanishing acts. Let's go. Number 10. Anthony Michael Hall. In the 1980s, Anthony Michael Hall was the undisputed king of the lovable geeks. He was the kid who could trip over his own insecurities and still end up prom hero cute. With his roles in John Hughes classics like 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, and Weird Science, Hall didn't just play the awkward teen. He was the awkward teen for an entire generation. He perfectly captured that blend of vulnerability and intelligence that made him relatable to anyone who ever felt like an outsider. He was the brain, the geek, the farmer Ted. He owned that lane. But lanes can become ruts. By 1990, Hall was facing a career cul-de-sac. The scripts that came his way were carbon copies of what he'd done before. Same nervous laugh, same dork jacket. He was being typecast, and he knew it. So he made a drastic choice. To escape the geek persona, he turned down the sequel to National Lampoon's Vacation and diversified his roles, even joining the cast of Saturday Night Live for a season. Hall decided he'd rather bench press than be typecast. He hit the gym like it owed him money, transforming his physique and hoping Hollywood would see him as more than just the scrawny kid. Spoiler, it didn't, not right away. The 90s saw him in a series of minor roles, but Hall didn't give up. He proved his versatility in projects like Edward Scissorhands and earned acclaim for his portrayal of Bill Gates in the 1999 TV movie Pirates of Silicon Valley. His real career resurgence came in 2002 when he landed the lead role in the USA Network series The Dead Zone, based on the Stephen King novel. For 6 seasons, he captivated audiences as Johnny Smith, a man who wakes from a coma with psychic powers. The show was a hit, proving that Hall had successfully shed his teen movie skin. These days, you might catch him in a crime show you stumble upon at 2 a.m., or in a major film like Halloween Kills. He has the same quick wit, but there's zero TMZ tail. He calls the quiet life bulletproofing. No autograph hounds, no red carpets, just work he enjoys, and a cup of coffee nobody feels the need to photograph. He found a way to keep the craft without the chaos. Number 9. Cindy Morgan. In the early 80s, Cindy Morgan's smile could power a small city. As the bombshell Lacey Underall in Caddyshack, she held her own against a cast of comedy titans. Then, as the dual character of Laura and her digital counterpart Yori in Tron, she became an icon of the burgeoning sci-fi and video game era. She was smart, She was stunning, and she had two massive cult classics under her belt. It seemed like she was just getting started. Then, the calls just stopped. After a few more rolls, the phone went quiet. Puzzled, she asked her agent what was going on. His answer was baffling. "They think you're retired," he said. She was only 32 years old and hadn't even bought the good luggage yet. Hollywood, in its infinite and often flawed wisdom, had simply decided her career was over without consulting her. Instead of fighting a losing battle against industry gatekeepers, Morgan did something completely unexpected. She chased pixels instead of parts. Fascinated by the digital world she'd helped bring to life in Tron, she taught herself to code. She embraced the early CGI wave and began a new career in computer technology and voiceover work. She wound up earning Silicon Valley money while her old movie posters gathered dust in dorm rooms. She never completely turned her back on her past. She's a beloved regular on the convention circuit, where she'll happily sign an 8x10 of Laura or Lacey for a fan. Then she'll hop on a red-eye flight home to a life where she's a respected tech professional, debugging software for people who have no idea they're working with a screen icon. It's the perfect cover, a second act that was entirely of her own design. Number 8. Ali Sheedy as Allison Reynolds, the basket case in The Breakfast Club. Ali Sheedy was the quiet storm at the heart of the Brat Pack, with her dark eyes and a voice that sounded like cigarettes and secrets. She embodied a kind of gothic, artistic cool. Alongside roles in War Games and St. Elmo's Fire, she was a fixture of the 80s cinematic landscape. She was the princess in the library, a brooding, complex figure who felt intensely real. But when the big Brat Pack parties started to feel less like a celebration and more like a job, Ali Sheedy quietly skipped the next invitation. The constant glare of the spotlight felt intrusive and hollow. So she slipped out the back door of Hollywood and into a college lecture hall. She enrolled in a university, studied poetry, and reconnected with a part of herself that had nothing to do with call sheets or box office returns. Eventually, she began teaching, sharing her love of literature, and writing with kids who'd never even heard of St. Elmo's Fire. She didn't abandon acting entirely, but she changed the venue. She traded massive film sets for tiny independent theaters where the stage lights smell like dust and dreams. She acts in indie films and off-Broadway plays, choosing projects for their artistic merit rather than their commercial potential. If you ask her about fame today, she'll grin and tell you that the loudest applause she hears now comes from a teenager who has just written their first poem about skateboards or heartbreak. For her, that authentic, personal connection is something no blockbuster premiere could ever top. Number 7. Judge Reinhold. In the 80s, Judge Reinhold was the guy you could count on for a memorable, scene-stealing performance. He sprinted through fast times at Ridgemont High as the perpetually on-the-hustle Brad Hamilton and brought a wide-eyed, "Wait, is this really happening?" energy to his role as Detective Billy Rosewood in Beverly Hills Cop, with hits like Ruthless People and The Santa Claus. Later on, he became one of the most recognizable character actors of his time. But somewhere around the mid-90s, the big screen laughs began to thin out. The blockbuster roles became less frequent, and the phone didn't ring as often for those high-profile gigs. For many actors, this is where the story turns bitter. But Judge didn't rage quit. He just hustled. He adapted. He understood that a career isn't always a straight line to the top. He became the working actor's working actor. He lent his voice to animated cartoons. He took to the stage in regional theater productions. He even nailed a yogurt commercial in what was reportedly a single take. He didn't see any job as beneath him. He saw it all as part of the craft. He kept working, staying sharp, and paying the bills, far from the judgmental eyes of the Hollywood elite. He has a great sense of humor about his particular level of fame. He jokes that his superpower is being the most famous person you can't quite place when you see him at Trader Joe's. He embraces the, "Hey, I know that guy" phenomenon. And when the cashier finally connects the dots and remembers him as Eddie Murphy's earnest sidekick, he'll sometimes sign the receipt Detective Rosewood, a playful nod to the role that made him a household face, if not a household name. Number 6. Andrew McCarthy. As Blaine McDonough, the soft-spoken, sensitive heartthrob in Pretty in Pink, Andrew McCarthy defined a new kind of leading man. He was the preppy boy with a good heart, the rich kid who could see past social cliques. As a core member of the Brat Pack, he starred in era-defining films like St. Elmo's Fire and Less Than Zero. For a while, that role was gold. But then the mirror started talking back, reminding him, "You're almost 30, kid." Auditions became a frustrating loop of too short, too soft, too whatever. The very sensitivity that made him a star was now being used against him. So, McCarthy did something radical. He bought a backpack that was bigger than his ego and decided to disappear into the world. He started traveling, not as a tourist, but as an explorer. He traded film scripts for plane tickets and found a new voice, this time on the page. He became an award-winning travel writer, filing stories from glaciers in Patagonia, deserts in the Sahara, and the remote corners of Costa Rica for outlets like National Geographic and the New York Times. He wrote the kind of travel pieces that make you smell the airport coffee and feel the dust of a foreign road. Decades later, he looked back at the whirlwind of his early fame and wrote a memoir titled Brat, an 80's Story. The book, which landed on the bestseller list, is a revealing and honest look at coming of age in a maelstrom, grappling with ambition, addiction, and identity. It proved that you can leave the spotlight, find yourself on the other side of the world, and still come back to write the last chapter on your own terms. Number 5. Phoebe Cates. One red bikini, one pool, and one unforgettable scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. In that moment, the world collectively hit pause. Phoebe Cates became an instant icon, the ultimate girl-next-door fantasy for a generation of moviegoers. But she was more than just a poster on a wall. She followed up that success with a leading role in the beloved classic Gremlins and its sequel, proving she had genuine comedic timing and screen presence. She could have kept cashing checks based on that fame for years to come. But family called louder than Hollywood. In 1989, she married Oscar-winning actor Kevin Kline. They had agreed to alternate their acting schedules so one parent could always be with their children. But after their son Owen was born in 1991, followed by their daughter Greta in 1994, Cates found she didn't want to go back. The choice was simple for her. Raising her family was more important than any movie role. So she retired. And in 2005, she channeled her creative energy into a new venture, opening a unique boutique on New York's Madison Avenue called Blue Tree. The shop is a curated collection of quirky gifts, jewelry, and home goods, all reflecting that signature Phoebe Cates warmth. She told an interviewer she doesn't miss it, and the way she says it sounds like a casual shrug at an old job she simply outgrew. If you happen to buy a candle at Blue Tree today, there's a good chance you'll never realize that the person who just rang you up was once one of the most famous teenagers on the planet. And that's exactly how she likes it. Number 4. Jennifer Grey. Nobody puts baby in a corner. That line from Dirty Dancing wasn't just a piece of dialogue, it was a cultural promise. As Frances Baby Houseman, Jennifer Grey danced her way into cinematic immortality. The 1987 film was a global phenomenon, and Grey became America's sweetheart overnight. She had it all: talent, charm, and the lead role in one of the most beloved movies of all time. The future seemed limitless, but Hollywood can be a cruel and superficial place. Following the advice of her mother and industry professionals, Gray decided to get a nose job, a procedure she hoped would open up more casting opportunities. She had 2 rhinoplasty procedures, which she later called Schnazageddon. The result was technically successful, but it rendered her unrecognizable. She tells a story of attending a premiere shortly after, where her friend Michael Douglas didn't even know who she was. In an instant, the face the world had fallen in love with was gone. "Overnight, I lose my identity and my career," she wrote in her memoir. Hollywood claimed it could no longer read her, and the roles dried up. Gray took the devastating note, vanished from the A-list, and began the long process of retooling her career. She studied with the legendary comedy troupe The Groundlings, took roles in small indie films, and did voiceover work. She stacked new skills like Jenga blocks, refusing to be defeated. Then, in 2010, she accepted an offer she'd been turning down for years to compete on Dancing with the Stars. Despite suffering a ruptured disc the night before the finale, she went on to win the entire competition. It was a triumphant return, reminding everyone that while a face can change, the hips don't lie, and neither does raw talent. Today, she teaches young actors, and her pep talk is born from hard-won experience. Rejection is just intel. Use it. Number 3. Debra Winger. In the 1980s, Debra Winger was not just a star, she was a force of nature. With 3 Oscar nominations before the age of 40 for powerhouse performances in An Officer and a Gentleman, Terms of Endearment, and Shadowlands, she was widely regarded as one of the most talented actresses of her generation. But along with the accolades came a reputation. Rumors flew. She was difficult, a diva, impossible to work with. Then, in 1995, at the height of her career, Winger did the unthinkable. Click. Off went the switch. She walked away from Hollywood. The tabloids and industry gossips chalked it up to burnout or being blacklisted. But Debra's truth, as she later explained, was much simpler and more profound. "I wanted to know what my own breathing sounded like without a trailer nearby." She was tired of the game, disillusioned with the lack of challenging roles for women her age, and yearned for an authentic life. "My life challenged me more than the parts, so I dove into it fully," she said. She moved to rural New York with her husband, actor Arliss Howard, raised her sons, and taught yoga in a converted barn. She traded scripts for gardening and red carpets for charity work. She didn't consider it a retirement, but a pause. She'll still act, occasionally popping up in a film or series that genuinely challenges her, but only long enough to stretch a new muscle, never long enough to get trapped again. The resume is shorter now, but the respect for her talent and her courage to choose life over fame is taller than ever. Number 2. Rick Moranis, Louis Tully in Ghostbusters, Dark Helmet in Spaceballs, Wayne Selinsky in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. For a solid decade, Rick Moranis had the market cornered on the adorable, bespectacled neurotic. His journey from the Canadian sketch show SCTV to Hollywood blockbuster was swift and spectacular. He was the master of a very specific and very funny brand of nerdy charm. Then, in 1991, his life was struck by an unimaginable tragedy. His wife, costume designer Ann Belsky, passed away from breast cancer, leaving him a single father to 2 very young children. He tried to juggle his demanding career with parenting, but the math quickly became brutal. 2 kids, 1 dad, and 0 bandwidth for 14-hour shoots in another country. It got to the point where I was doing a lot of pictures with kids, really nice kids, but not my kids, he explained. So in 1997, he quietly walked away from it all. There was no press conference, No dramatic exit, no tell-all interview. He just stopped taking roles. The tabloids tried to invent a mystery of his disappearance, but the reality was beautifully simple. Rick Moranis was at home, packing school lunches, helping with homework, and attending Little League games in a baseball cap that made him blend in with all the other dads. I took a break, which turned into a longer break, he later said. And then I found that I really didn't miss it. He popped back into the public eye briefly in 2020 for a commercial with Ryan Reynolds and is slated to appear in a new Shrunk movie. When asked about his long absence, he joked, "I never retired. I just took a long lunch." That one line got a bigger laugh than any scripted joke he ever told. Number 1. Justine Bateman. As Mallory Keaton on Family Ties, Justine Bateman was the epitome of 80s teen aspiration. She was the shopping-obsessed, slightly ditzy older sister we all secretly rooted for. The role made her a household name and a primetime superstar. When the hugely popular sitcom finally wrapped up in 1989, Bateman had the world at her feet. She could have easily transitioned into a long career playing similar characters in movies and other shows. But when Justine looked at her resume, she saw one character in a dozen different outfits, and she thought, nope. She had a desire for something more, something that challenged a different part of her brain. So she did something almost unheard of for a star of her magnitude. She enrolled at UCLA at the age of 38 and decided to study computer science and digital media management. She crushed her classes, fell in love with coding, and found a new passion far from the Hollywood sound stages. She then took that knowledge and stepped behind the camera, starting a new career as a writer and director. Her 2021 directorial debut, Violet, landed rave reviews for its innovative style and raw emotional honesty, all without the need for billboard-sized ads. Today, she's also an author and a fierce advocate for aging naturally in an industry obsessed with youth. She calls the anonymity of her post-fame life sweet payback. There are no paparazzi hiding in the bushes, just code that compiles and stories that stick. From primetime royalty to a keyboard warrior and acclaimed director, that's a plot twist nobody saw coming. Honorable mentions. Lightning round. Amanda Weiss, forever remembered as Tina from A Nightmare on Elm Street, now channels her experience into the next generation, teaching scene study to aspiring actors in Los Angeles. Michael Biehn, the tough-as-nails hero from The Terminator and Aliens, traded futuristic firefights for a quieter life. Between appearances at Comic-Cons, he spends his time herding cattle on his ranch. Jamie Gertz, the star of The Lost Boys and Less Than Zero, took a completely different path. After marrying billionaire Tony Ressler, she became a part owner of the NBA's Atlanta Hawks and is now a fixture in the world of professional sports. Kim Carnes, whose raspy voice made Bette Davis' Eyes one of the biggest hits of the entire decade, moved to Nashville, where she continues to write and record music, lending her iconic vocals to clubs you've probably never heard of. And Christopher Lambert, the immortal hero of Highlander? He's likely swirling a glass of his own brand of red wine at his vineyard in Provence, living a life as epic as his most famous character. What links all of these incredible vanishing acts? It isn't failure or fading away. In every case, it's about a moment of clarity. The moment the exit sign looked brighter and more inviting than the spotlight. They were faced with a choice between the life everyone thought they wanted and the life they actually needed. They chose family. They chose code, classrooms, and cattle. They chose the quiet satisfaction of building something new, whether it was a business, a book, or simply a peaceful home. They chose blessed silence over thunderous applause. Fame is a fascinating, fleeting thing. But as these 10 stories show, freedom is forever. If you're still here after part 1, hit that subscribe button, part 2 is brewing, and the 80s gave us more mysteries than we've got space for on a mixtape. See you in the rewind.